Welcome to Cargo Film Presents. I'm Dan.
And I'm Dave.
On Cargo Film Presents, we review the latest in documentaries, and today we're going to be talking about Seaspiracy, which is the new Netflix documentary from the producer of Cowspiracy and directed by Ali Tabrizi, who describes himself as a Jacques Cousteau wannabe who stumbles onto a conspiracy, a seaspiracy, and argues that commercial fishing with the complicity of NGOs are exhausting the world's seafood supply and driving the destruction of our oceans and marine life. And the main solution at our disposal we have is to stop eating fish.
My name is Ali. I've been fascinated with the ocean for as long as I can remember. But this romantic vision that I always had of the ocean completely changed. I was forced to confront a side of the story I never knew, a story of just how huge our impact on the seas had become.
So did it hold water for you, or was it a bit fishy? Sorry.
It's all right. Oh boy. Okay. I mean, I had a few lined up in my holster here, but I'm not going to use them after that. So listen, I mean, this isn't a film like many of the other quality films we've discussed on this conversation YouTube show. I have reservations recommending this on the basis of just the filmmaking, but I have no problem recommending it on the basis of questioning, where one's food comes from and exploring the questions that it raises. I have no idea whether any of the statements and facts presented in the film and by this filmmaking team are accurate. Essentially, the message being that commercial fishing is destroying our oceans, but if it makes viewers think twice about what they're eating, and if they even have that luxury, because not everyone does, then that's a good thing. But the filmmaking did annoy me, and it's I had issues carrying on with it as I was watching this. I mean, first the filmmaker described, as you said, that first it starts like a true crime doc. It was like the opening of a episode of CSI or one of those shows, and in the next sequence he's heralding legendary filmmakers like Jacques Cousteau, Richard Attenborough, and Sylvia Earle as inspiration. So just there was a bit of a disconnect just from the get-go. And then he's using these other annoying devices, like showing up at Mitsubishi's offices for a surprise visit and asking them about their participation in the bluefish tuna industry and how that's impacting and killing dolphins. A good question to ask, but they're shown being escorted out of their offices, like Mitsubishi was trying to hide something. Come on. I mean, you show up at anybody's offices unannounced. You expect them to take you seriously and take a meeting with you. I mean, do you think anybody will get anything done?
Except ours. If you come to except our offices. If you come to our offices, we won't throw you out. We'll invite you.
We won't. You can show up anytime. But that's the thing. It's these methods are peppered throughout the film, and they're implying guilt, but really they're just kind of ripping off a style that feels like a cheap imitation of hard-hitting investigative journalism. I took that line from something I read. So I was kind of annoyed by it, frankly. I really wanted to stop watching, and if it wasn't for the fact that we were meant to talk about it in this conversation, I would have. But I want to make clear that the questions it raises, and if there's any truth to a lot of the facts that are some of the facts that are throughout this film, certainly worth exploring.
I have to say a very similar feeling. It was deeply frustrating to watch, because it is such an important topic, and on the one hand you can say it's excellent that the film puts fishing and overfishing, the questions about the seafood supply chain, illegal fishing, modern slavery and human rights abuses within that industry. I mean, these are all really important things to talk about. And then suddenly it's, into conspiracy mode, in order to really, unfortunately, oversimplify what, is such a massive, complicated problem. I mean, and then you're left to wonder, like, is the reason that they have oversimplified this issue so much is to present such a simple, easy solution, which is to not, eat fish. And I'm a vegan, but at the same time, I don't want to necessarily watch a film that makes such a complicated, complex issue, reduces it so much to offer you the solution. At the end, you're like, well, here's a plant-based seafood company that is not available to pretty much anyone in the world. I mean, I guess it's available in some place in the States, not in restaurants or whatever, but like, this is your solution. You're like, whoa, what? I don't understand how that computes with the enormity of the problem and the issue. So I did find it, yeah, like you, a very frustrating watch. And I think that was, seemed to be a lot of the response, some of the response I was reading online. People from the science community, journalism community were wondering, whoa, what happened here? Like, why did they cherry pick, facts? And it also felt like there's just such a barrage of facts. It was almost like you weren't supposed to, you know, compute those facts, understand those facts. It was just there to, like, hit you with so much information that you suddenly, you're like, all right, you must be telling the truth. This must be the correct depiction of the issue. So that also sort of bothered me. It's a kind of a pet peeve when there's just so many overwhelming facts that you're like, wait a second, why do they need this many?
We hear a lot about blood diamonds. This is blood shrimp.
Raising this interesting question again that we've heard before in documentaries, should they be peer reviewed or should they have footnotes? Because what are we supposed to do with this in some sense? Like, is this supposed to be a piece of entertainment? Is this like are we supposed to take this really seriously as a piece of journalism? Or is it we're just supposed to be caught up in the controversy and the outrage of it?
How about none of the above? And maybe it's meant to just bring eyeballs to the service that is presenting it. Clearly, the filmmaker had a success, with his previous, and it seems like, and I didn't watch that film, mind you, but it sounds like it's similar in its execution as this one, and therefore, I mean, if they can get away with it, and it seems like they can, you get that social media conversation going online. It's low-hanging fruit because, again, the message does gain traction in social media conversations, and we're not disputing the subjects and questions it's raising here, but it's just the execution of that story, which seems like, it's not investigative journalism. There are some things that are brought up that tread on some in that territory more than others, but ultimately, they're essentially attaching commercial fishing as this unregulated environment without any government oversight. I mean, when you're out at sea, it seems like you can do whatever you want and report back whatever you want. And there are clearly a lot of these, people out at sea are doing exactly that. They knock environmental groups and organizations, which also, was revealing to me where they, the kind of the flimsy way they go about certifying fish product as sustainable when it doesn't seem like there really is as much oversight as one would think. And they knock foreign fishing as not a completely healthy alternative as well. So again, all, as you said, important issues, but they take a very flimsy, superficial approach. And I was disappointed with the way it was presented. Certainly wasn't convincing to me that any of the stories reported here were accurate or reflective of reality.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of cherry picking. I mean, there are certainly problems and issues with eco-labeling, the labeling of products, and if they are in fact accurate or not, and certainly questions about overfishing and all around these questions of sustainability, but not to allow us to understand, the the Marine Sustainability Council, who they are, how they were founded, how they were started, and just to say, to say that they are in bed with, commercial fishing interests, and just to leave it there, it just did feel like it was really going for the shock factor rather than, really helping us understand, some of these thornier questions.
But even so, there was no shock factor there, because it was evident that he's just kind of riffing on a style that you have seen in actual investigative journalism docs. So it kind of falls flat ultimately, because it's pretty transparent, and so I'm surprised that the filmmaker is able to go back to the platform and sell them on the same idea, and actually, he's laughing all the way to the bank, and good for him. But I was clearly surprised that this didn't require any more oversight as a film to raise awareness for these very important issues. However, having said that, let's talk about maybe some of the important facts that it does raise. This important problem of bycatch, where apparently like over 300,000 whales and dolphins are killed every year as a result of what they call bycatch by commercial fishing. We already talked about the labels certifying fish products as sustainable, or the fact that fish nets discarded in the ocean are far more dangerous than any plastics we as a civilized, human population discard in the ocean, like claiming, again, I don't know if this is accurate, but up to 46% of the waste in the oceans are fishing nets. Did you verify that fact?
I did not verify that fact, no, but it sounded credible, and
Yeah.
but I did discover that, like, and this is part of our problem with the film, is that there were like there are over 100 NGOs and organizations who are actively organizing and fighting and trying and collecting ghost gear that's in the ocean and that washes up on beaches. So it's kind of a great disservice to some of the people who are really trying really hard to combat some of this stuff, and just say like there's all this stuff and no one's doing anything about it. It's like, well,
Right.
come on, there's a lot of people out there actively fighting the good fight on behalf of our oceans.
Right.
But
That's just another cheap and yet probably effective method of creating urgency, propping up the urgency, in the story. I don't know. It all strikes me as kind of very lazy filmmaking ultimately. But as I say, he's the one cashing the checks for this film. So he's clearly smarter than I am. But go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say we should say that the filmmaker is different. The producer is the same from Cowspiracy to Seaspiracy. The filmmaker is actually a different guy, but the playbook is this, like, almost exactly the same. Where he
Got it.
he starts off as a kind of a idealistic, naive, young guy who wants to do good and save the planet,
Right.
and then discovers that the NGOs and group advocacy groups that he supported are captured and are in bed with big business or big interests.
Where are the big environment groups? They are deliberately not engaging with the most important issue of all.
Can you turn off the cameras? Thanks.
Would you say there's any safety concerns for me making this film?
I mean, I just don't know why we just have to go instantly to conspiracy mode, I mean, I get it. These problems are massive and they're global and they're really hard to figure out. I mean, how do you, as you said, how do you regulate and, figure out, adjudicate between millions of different actors on the high seas, where it's very difficult to regulate and know what's going on there. It's easier to think, well, there's a conspiracy going on, and that's really the best way to understand this.
Right. So I think we would recommend, some further exploration and research if you're interested in the subject. I mean, I think it raises those important questions, and we do require solutions to help fix them, and maybe, you know, at the very least, it generates some of that conversation, but clearly isn't the most effective, in my opinion. Although I did enjoy, if we're getting into the fun fact part of the conversation here, or maybe more like the WTF fact. There was one person interviewed who suggested that the Deepwater Horizon disaster, which is the single largest ever marine spill in history in the Gulf of Mexico, may actually have been good for the fish, as it kept commercial fishing away from the area for months and gave them a chance to, you know, whatever, replenish. And that was astounding to me, you know. And if that's true, I mean, is it Shell? Is it Shell that was responsible for that spill?
Is it Shell or was it BP?
Oh, BP. I think you're right.
BP.
Well, I mean, you know, they should be using that as part of their marketing out there, that they've replenished the their
I was
marine
going to say,
life.
some people might misinterpret that and take that the wrong way and think, yeah, we should have more oil spills and we'll replenish our
right.
fish stocks. You know?
That's right.
In
Yes.
some ways, you almost thought that that was what the film was trying to, like, you know, to tell you. But yeah, just I guess the more important point is that, you know, with proper management of fish supplies and fish stocks, is like they are, you know, they can bounce back. And
Yes.
that's really what's important. And I think that, you know, sort of what maybe the film missed a trick into suggesting we need to, you know, put more pressure on governments and put more pressure, you know, in the places that matter, you know, rather than thinking, oh, there's this grand conspiracy that there's nothing we can do about it. We can't trust anyone in governments. We can't trust anyone in NGOs. We can't trust anyone who's a fisherman. All we can trust is, you know, to not eat fish. Like,
Right.
and that seemed to me a really sad, even as doom and gloom as the film was, it seemed like a very sad ending to this thing. So I was a little disappointed. Although the best, you know, one of the best things about the film was learning that herring communicate through farting.
Oh, my goodness.
That's another WTF
Yes,
fun
no
fact
doubt.
from a scientist who's
Right. Who also, you know, can tell that story with a straight face.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that was like, yeah, there we go.
See? Well, there you go. That, you know, the film's worth watching just for the build up to that joke.
There you go.
You can entertain your friends at cocktail parties when we're ready to have them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for Seaspiracy, unless there's anything else you wanted to.
No, it's you know, important stuff. Check out other sources, I would say, but you know, I would skim this film.
All right, there you have it, folks. So, Seaspiracy, you can skim it, skip it, or stream it on Netflix. We'll leave it in your hands, and we will see you next week.
See you next time.
All right.